it's all about innovation, and then some of the possibilities as to what we can do are quite staggering. You've got to start somewhere and do some things, and then see where that leads you to the next activity.
Hello and welcome. Today I'm very excited to be joined by Ian Caveney, Head of Tech4Good at BT. So Ian, thank you so much for joining me today. Please introduce yourself and tell me, what do you do as Head of Tech4Good?
I generally describe it as a bit of a business development role. I work within the digital impact and sustainability team at BT, which essentially is a CSR team. But my role is very interesting in the sense that I'm there to drive tech innovation within the different parts of BT that essentially can deliver positive environmental outputs or can deliver positive societal impact.
Why do you do this? There's a million things you could be doing, but what brought you here?
The bulk of my background has actually been in brand strategy and advertising and communications. And I suppose it was back actually working on the launch of the EE brand back in 2012, where actually my eyes sort of be open to the idea of purpose and responsibility. And I think that was part of the fact that we were really looking to embed the idea of responsibility and sustainability into the EE brand at that time. And then from that, the classic thing, one thing led to another. So when an opportunity came to actually take up and lead the sustainability team at EE, I was sort of thought, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to sort of take a sideways move into a new area. I've kind of sort of forged this air of belief, the technology that telecoms providers deliver has a great ability to sort of have the transformative impact on people and communities and society as a whole. So I think it's kind of always been something that I've been a tech optimist. I've really focused on that.
What is it that you hope to be able to contribute to the global kind of race towards these wonderfully coloured charts? Yeah. Which one really excites you and you think most passionately about?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, over time, I've really got to focus on the climate crisis. And I think that's, there's lots of issues that we need to address across the world. But I think, fundamentally and personally for me, the climate crisis is fundamentally so entwined with everything else that if we don't get that thing right, then none of the other SDGs are really potentially going to matter. Within my role, we've got a clear focus on climate action. The organisation as a whole has been a climate leadership organisation for a number of years. So we've got the backing and support within the business to drive activity in that area. And it's a bit cheesy, but it is that simple thing of I want to make sure that I can look my kids in the eye when I'm older and say, look, I was there trying to solve things about the climate crisis. I was just carrying on blindly, doing nothing about it. I sort of really tried to sort of do the best I can within the role I've got. And it's all about innovation, and then some of the possibilities as to what we can do are quite staggering. But it's about you've got to start somewhere and do some things, and then see where that leads you to the next activity.
How do you see people looking at you at telecoms trying to do tech for good? And do you have to explain it much, or do you have to talk about the things you enable?
Yeah, well, I think the whole enablement piece is the critical part of it, and I think you've hit a nail on the head there, which is the mobile networks, the fit networks that telecoms providers across the globe provide are essentially that backbone, that platform that other people can then build upon to deliver the tech solutions. And a lot of it is about how you as a telecoms company can either accelerate activity in those spaces, how you can sort of create opportunities for that. I mean, a lot of the work that BT's done over time has sort of focused on the climate impact of its products and services. So net positive carbon target that we had at BT, which we actually met last year, actually, in the whole sense of for every one of carbon that BT produces, it enables our customers to save 3 times that amount for the products and services through video conferencing, through other elements. So that kind of enablement element is there. And a lot of the work I've been doing in the last 12 months is that it can't be climate on its own. It has to be climate impact as well as broader business benefits that you're delivering wherever possible. And I think that whole commercial lens to it is essential. Otherwise, it's Tech4Good activity is going to be reliant on flat philanthropic funding or that kind of thing, and that's not going to drive the systematic change that's required. So a lot of my work, although I come from the sustainability team, absolutely has an overt commercial lens to it, because it has to have value and it has to have longevity and to be able to fund itself. You're selling things that have a positive impact, and it's profit with purpose. That is a key thing I believe in, is that you can get the two things where you can deliver profit, but you can also have a positive impact at the same time. And I think that whole groundswell in ESG from the investor community as well is absolutely leading that. And I suppose having that buy-in and support from the top of the house. So this is something whereby the CEO, the chairman believe in what it is that we're doing here, and it's embedded into the overall business strategy, actually, in the sense of what BT should deliver. It should be helping to deliver a bright, sustainable future. We've got the license to do what we want, what we need to do. The tricky bit though is making it happen. As you probably know, in any organization, it's great to have words on PowerPoint decks and to have a nice purpose and all these sort of things, but driving that within a commercial organization and driving that with people who often have a lot of short-term targets can be tricky. But I have to say, people are open to it. People realize that there's a reason why we should be doing these sort of things, and so it's just that bit of a process and a journey that a business like BT is going on.
Is this for good movement and kind of momentum, particularly with the ESG funding that you mentioned? Is it different today than it was CSR, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I really believe it is. I think that for an organization like BT, it can be a transformational organization in the UK, for example. We're making a once-in-a-lifetime investment in the UK's broadband infrastructure and mobile infrastructure. And the idea of profit with purpose, I think, is again sort of, if we don't have sustainability embedded in the overall company strategy, which again, to be fair, we've really probably only just cracked that in the last 12 months, that it appears. It's not just a kind of, and we do sustainability, by the way. It is. No, it's on there, on the one slider that covers the overall strategy. And we're getting lots of questions from the investors, were you going hard enough? Are you going fast enough? How are you embedding that into the business? And it is, to a certain extent, still something that if you spoke to most people in the business, they wouldn't necessarily realize that some of the work they're doing is driving change, but actually it is. But I think it's sometimes that realization of people can do more themselves within a business. Now, any sustainability or CSR team, as it may be still called, is only going to be a few people. And if I take BT, there's over 100,000 people. So we as ourselves aren't going to manage and deliver everything. We have to look at how we embed that change, how we embed that work within the business. And essentially that's really kind of, I go back to describe my role as a business development role, is kind of looking at how we can create the right circumstances or the right opportunities to do tech like this. But then the idea is once you prove the opportunity and prove the case for it, then there's nothing to stop the different parts of the business to take ownership and drive it forward.
You're not just disseminating ownership of those goals, but almost decentralizing it across the business, aren't you?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's a kind of, again, a CSR team kind of can argue the day they don't have to exist, they've done their job, because everything that needs to be done within the business is embedded. And I think that's not going to happen. You always need people to have specialities and skills to drive this agenda and this theme. But it's embedding and getting people to realize that they can exact the change. I mean, one of the examples I use is that one of the major projects I'm working on at the moment, which is the thing called a green tech innovation platform. Part of the outcome we're driving to is that different commercial parts of the business will be delivering propositions. Now, that's their job in the business, is to deliver propositions. My job in the sustainability team is not to do that, but I need them to deliver those propositions that have those positive or environmental impacts, as well as the broader business benefits. So it's kind of that thing of you're shepherding and moving and I was about to say coercing, that's maybe not the right word, but kind of,
Directing.
sort of Directing. That's probably a better fair way of doing it. But it is, and actually, it definitely isn't coercing as well. Actually, just to come back to that point, in the sense of,
if you want, I can make a banner across the bottom here and says definitely not coercing.
Well, I could probably say in the sense of, I think about when I started some of the work I was doing 12 months ago, talking about the importance of the climate action and us need to do things, and that was even pre-COVID. I didn't have anybody questioning the issue of climate as being something that's not there. I think the biggest question was, so how do we do this? How do we drive this forward? How can we make a difference? And I think, that is, as I said a couple of times already, that's kind of the challenge. It's what I enjoy, actually. It's driving change and seeing things evolve, and seeing new tech is also dead exciting as well. So it's kind of that. I suppose that's why I love it.
Tell me about a project you've been working on that you're really enjoying, and why.
What I personally quite enjoy is, and sort of building on my brand background, is actually how do you make that tech more interesting, easily understood? How do you position it in a way that makes it more compelling and exciting for people to want to buy, to want to use? And so that angle is really interesting. The second bit with the Green Tech Innovation Platform is this idea of partnerships, and recognizing that, BT on its own cannot solve all the problems that its customers need to be solved. So the idea is that we look outside of our organization and think about what are the types of organizations who we can partner with to help develop new products and services to augment our existing network provision, and working that partnership then with customers, delivering proof of concepts, building on that, and then the idea of scaling something out after that is super exciting.
Who do you want to reach to invite them to come and work with you?
Working very closely with an organisation called Plug and Play, a Silicon Valley-based organisation who essentially drive a lot of innovation that they support and fund a lot of early stage and scale up organizations. But then on the other side, what they do, they work with a number of large corporates in terms of driving innovation agendas. So they kind of meld both the corporate and the innovation community together. And they've been a sort of a key partner on the whole green tech platform work around helping us scout, helping us find who's out there. But then sort of driving that process towards proof of concepts and things, which is essentially where we're at now. We had an event at the back end of January where we launched the two new partnerships that have come from that work, and now what is positive, actually we had quite a few inquiries about proof of concept opportunities, and now sort of in the following weeks we've just been having discussions with a lot of public sector customers here in the UK. From
a general John or Jane on the street, how are they going to start to see the impact of the work that you're doing? How does that filter down out through all of these partnerships into our lives?
Some of it they might not notice, which is sometimes great in the sense of hopefully these things are happening in the background. I think one example, so I'll talk about IOPT. So they are one of the partners we've signed up through the Green Tech Innovation Platform. They're a Glasgow-based scale-up, and essentially what they offer is a IoT solution for social housing. So essentially what they're able to do is to install sensors into housing which will measure damp, mold, heat, etc. And from that you can basically essentially and even sort of understand issues around fuel poverty, etc., which obviously is a big important issue. And as part of their solution, what they also have is a app they've developed, which is can actually act as a communicating opportunity to tenants. Because again, if you're issues of costs of damp and those sort of things, if you're able to stop them earlier, that then you as a social housing provider can save literally thousands and millions of pounds. So the idea is that there's a preventative maintenance element to it, but then also there's a actual element around having better communication with your tenants. You're not sending engineers out to check things that they don't need to check. So you're reducing travel. So there's lots of, and these are all, when you add up the kind of the sort of business case benefits around, preventative maintenance savings, etc., along with the environmental benefits, what you then start to build up is, a massively good reason to actually drive these sort of solutions forward.
Air quality is a thing that I've been spending a lot of time on, and having a lot of conversations on. I've got this one over here, the Flow.
Yeah.
I built my own as well. And from my old, we met originally when I was at Root Metrics. So taking some of those concepts, I was working on an idea of almost decentralized hyperlocal air quality monitoring.
One of the interesting things I think that will happen within climate over the next 3 to 5 years is the whole climate finance side of things, which will open up, again, going back to the investment side, what's going to drive it is that, I'm not a raging capitalist, but at the same time, money does drive a lot of action. So the fact if that there's people are going to need to invest in green activities to avoid paying too much in tax, etc., then that's going to lead, the regulatory things is going to lead things in a certain way, and then equally better regulation around climate finance, that kind of thing, is also going to give people confidence to do more in that space. Because there are always going to be companies that, airline sector. I don't think we're going to have an electric Boeing 747 anytime soon. So it's, or are we? Oh.
My first interview, so if you're watching this, go and have a look at YouTube, is with a company called Electric Sky, and they are working on beaming electricity into the planes. It's fascinating and
right.
without killing birds. That's really good.
But it is, there are going to be people who are going to need to use offsets in relation to their climate activities.
Until you make finance tied to your environmental impact or your purpose or your impact on any of these, maybe, real genuine change is going to be very difficult.
That will drive the action. You need those government levers, you need those sort of banking investment levers happening.
We live in a capitalist world, so if you're going to make change, it needs to align with the world you live in. If somebody was asking you, where should I go, to get inspired to do some good, how can I get involved? What would you offer them as some words of wisdom or some inspirational pointers?
Look at different sort of tech blogs. I mean, the stuff you're doing, Scott, is sort of that sort of stuff for me. I think that's a good place to start. I think what I find interesting, one of the things that, again, one of the projects I work on, so I'll do a quick plug on it, is a thing that actually BT have been working with an organisation called AbilityNet. And we've been running something called the Tech4Good Awards for the last 10 years. 2 years ago, a 9-year-old girl called Mahika Sharma, she came up with an idea of a smart stick for people who have sight loss. Now, there are already smart sticks on the market for people with sight loss, but Mahika designed hers in a very specific way, sort of looking at a very user-led approach to it. And so since her winning the award with that, I've been working with Mahika, but more importantly, working with the RNIB in the UK, which is the main charity that works with people with sight loss. And we're actually looking at to see how we can help develop her idea and almost bring it to market.
So let's think a little bit into the future. These goals are quite ambitious and quite enormous. We don't really have a huge amount of time to deliver on these. So what are you hoping will change from a regulatory point of view, from a policy point of view, from just day-to-day business, in order to help you achieve, the progress that you want to achieve against these?
I think you do need the governments and the leaders to set ambitious targets and to drive, change. But again, it's got to come from in the businesses itself. That companies have got to look at themselves and think, well, actually, if we don't do something about the way we operate, we might not even be here in 5 to 10 years. So that kind of need to drive it. I think what is maybe a bit of a gap is maybe it's nice and easy to say these things when you're working for a big blue chip organization like BT and you've got those big functions. What would you do if you're an SME? It's hard enough to keep your head above water, let alone worry about things like your environmental sustainability credentials, etc. But I think supporting and where again, I suppose where governments can make a difference is exactly in that space, is giving more guidance and more support to to companies to explain why it's important.
So before we wrap up, let me just remind anybody who, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and all that general YouTube stuff that you have to do. And then it just remains for me to say, Ian, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really good. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. All the best.